Hi everyone, this is Leon. A couple things before we begin this week. Due to some technical problems on my end, I am not in this episode, but Austin and Johnny are. The episode is noticeably shorter than usual due to this, but it is still a lot of fun, and I hope you will listen to it anyway. Also, there are Star Wars spoilers for The Last Jedi until about 28 minutes and 15 seconds into the episode.
It snowed! I mean, like, for the first time this year.
It was very hot today in Florida. It's cold for like 2 days last week.
Yeah, cold.
I don't know, like 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
I just made like a hand motion. I don't know what your weird pagan fucking temperature systems.
I don't think Fahrenheit is pagan, and if anything, it's very Protestant.
I don't know.
Okay.
40 degrees is actually pretty chilly.
Now I want chili.
What kind of chili? Turkey chili? Or like ground beef? Or... Have you guys ever seen any ground pork?
What should we skip to if we don't want to hear Star Wars talk? And then
edit
later
that
you
in.
edit it.
Austin, you edit that in afterwards.
Dude, that movie fucking owns.
I didn't see it yet. I don't give a rat's ass about spoilers. I don't. I honestly don't. Let's talk about it. I want to hear about it. I want to know about it. I am gonna go and see it, but no, I'm seriously. I don't. It doesn't fucking like. I had 3 people all be like, "Oh, we're gonna go see Star Wars, right?" I was like, "Yeah, okay, but when?" Like, I was ready to go on Monday. Basically, I couldn't do it on the weekend. I had a Christmas work function. Yeah, so that was like balls.
Yeah.
My whole week, essentially, since last week, my whole week has been wrapped up in all these shitty kind of like end of year fucking bullshit. And like so many of my friends are in trouble right now about like ridiculous shit. I talked a couple of weeks ago about how I had a friend whose wife died in her sleep. Well, it gets better for the J crew, which is not what I call my group of friends, but we have like, you know, the death of a parent for one of my friends. We have a horrid realization that a mistake that my friend made like 6 years ago has completely robbed her of the relationship that she thinks would actually have been the perfect thing for her. And it gets more colorful from there. It's been a week of support and obligation, so I did not get a chance to go see Star Wars. I'm sorry. I still want to talk about it, though, because, not having seen it, I'm amazed at how salty the internet can be about a movie about space wizards. Spoil, deep dive. I honestly don't care. I really don't. I have reached the point of 2017 where Johnny don't give a shit. Like, I am tapped out. I'm done. I have used up all the precious fluids in my care glands, and I'm out. I'm washing my hands of the whole fucking situation. Talk about it. I want to hear. So, how gay is Luke Skywalker?
I think the film's premise and like story are really interesting because it's not. It is at its very core a kind of deconstruction of Star Wars. It's an anti-Star Wars film.
So this is the Knights of the Old Republic 2 of Star Wars, which, let's be clear, was the best Star Wars game. Except for possibly maybe Jedi Outcast.
I think anyone who's played KOTOR 1 or 2 knows they're actually better than most of the movies.
Okay, but Star Wars and video games are so they're so close to each other. They're so good and evil power fantasy. Like, do you want to be the special? Like, that's fucking video games and Star Wars all over.
I mean, half the lines in the movie are spoken almost into the camera to the fandom, being
what
like,
a bunch of twerps.
let it go, nerds. Like, stop idolizing these flawed fuck-ups. Like, shit's gonna change, idiots. Like, almost every line they just turn to the camera and they're like, one of my favorite ones is like, do you think you just gotta solve everything by jumping in a spaceship and blowing other guys up? And it's like, hey, actually, life's way more complicated than that. And just like, it's not about heroism, guys. There's like all these really great lines that are spoken by characters, but they're really the movie just saying to the audience, like, hey, the thing you like actually is flawed in a bunch of ways, and all these people are complicated and kind of shitty. Like, Luke is an asshole, but that's the natural endpoint for someone who used to be a naive teenager and then saw tens of thousands of people die. Like, he kind of becomes his like the new Yoda, right?
As
like people,
as a fellow Grumpus, I will defend that transformation.
But, like, everyone remembers Yoda as being, like, the fun, guy who talks backwards. But if you actually go watch Empire Strike Back, he's, like, kind of a troll. Like, he is, like, unpleasant and impish in a lot of ways. And, like, he goes actually a little bit further than that. But I think it was, like, a very, full circle kind of thing. As, like, Luke being Rey's Yoda.
What about sorry, like, I gotta ask, because my senator...
Yeah, there's actually a pre-planned thing where she gets spaced, basically, but then she uses the Force for the first time to not die. Mm-hmm. And apparently, I was reading about this after I got out of the movie. By the way, I got out of the movie like an hour and a half ago, so it's very fresh for me. And I was reading about it, sitting here waiting for the podcast to start, and they actually discussed just having her die there because Carrie Fisher died in real life, but Rian Johnson fought for leaving her performance in, because she does wake up after being spaced and she's in a coma for a little bit, but she wakes up and she gives a performance for the rest of the film. And Johnson wanted to leave that in as kind of like, not to sweep her last work under the rug. Even though it would have been easier.
Props to Rian Johnson for that. Yeah, I guess I feel a little awkward that in episode 9 now we're going to get a scene where Paige runs in and goes, "It's the General." John Boyega is an incredibly charismatic man.
And then he accomplishes nothing. Like, I like that actor, but his role in this movie is its weakest part by far. But so this movie is essentially two different stories, and they only kind of intersect at the very end. One is everyone on this cool Irish island talking about philosophy, and the other is that episode of Battlestar Galactica where the bad guys keep teleporting after the good guys, and they have to figure out like how they're being tracked and stopping that. And eventually they intersect because the bad guys win the space battle thing, and at the end of this movie, the only people in the entire rebellion left fit on the Millennium Falcon. Like, the bad guys win like big time. There's like 8 dudes left at this. They get fucked up really bad, but then at the end, what's her name, Rey shows up and saves them, and Luke does his sacrifice, which we can talk about a little bit. But so the bulk of this movie is these two storylines cutting back and forth where, philosophy, Jedis, blah, 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 politics. And then it's just like, oh, hey, everyone is dying all around us all the time. It's actually kind of grim. And that's why I'm actually forgiving of, I think, some of the comic relief, which I think might rub people the wrong way. There's some weird jokiness in some of this movie, but they're bad space Nazis and they go all out for it. I have just an infinite amount of thoughts about some of that stuff, as far as tone and stuff, but that's very subjective. Like, if you like the jokes, you like the jokes. If you didn't, you didn't. I can't really change your mind with that. However, I do have very strong opinions, incontrovertible opinions, about the plot points that this movie puts forth, and they are phenomenal. The decisions, not my opinions on them, although those two. So the two big ones. Everyone went into this movie with the same 2 questions. They're shitty, bad questions, and I love the answer we got to them. The first question: who is the Supreme Leader Snoke? And question 2: who are Rey's parents? And the movie answers both of them in the best and only way. Any other way they would have answered them would have sucked.
Is it like? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, and who cares? Are the answers? Nothing. Anyone who wasted any time theorizing and trying to be like, no, Jar Jar Binks is secretly Snoke, or
Yeah, the very idea, all right, the very idea that every character in a franchise has to have some convoluted, like, related history, where it's like, oh, Supreme Leader Snoke was actually a technician on the third Death Star who got, like, ejected into the Endor atmosphere, and then he found Darth Vader's grave, and
he's the stormtrooper who hit his head on the door, and New Hope.
Like, it doesn't fucking matter, because, like, greatness and fucking, like, great evil, or, like, whatever you want to fucking call it, presence, effectiveness, can be born from anywhere. It doesn't fucking matter. There doesn't need to be a backstory.
No, he's just a fascist. He's a fascist alien. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Can he just be an asshole? Like, we already got our weird, like, twist where it was like, oh, geez, Kylo Ren is actually the son of Han and Leia. Like, that's our thing. That's our, no, I am your father moment, right? Like, it doesn't have to be like, no, I am your second cousin removed by marriage.
The film actually does an amazing job of properly contextualizing these Nazis, which is that they are contemptible, buffoonish cowards who have no complexity because they don't deserve it. Fuck them. Fuck all of them. And they get clowned on at every opportunity. They're incompetent losers, and that's all they are. They don't deserve
shitty space boys.
They don't deserve cool twists and backstories. Fuck them. And that's exactly how they're treated in this movie. It fucking owns.
Nice. They sold me into slavery, said they'd be back, didn't come back.
Literally, that's the reveal.
Like, and this is the thing. This is the thing, right? The Phantom Menace, the whole concept of this kid that had a forced destiny and an immaculate conception. Fans were like, that's a bunch of bullshit.
But they need it. They have a psychological need to construct these myths, which is what The Last Jedi is about. It's that these myths of heroism are harmful garbage. There's no such thing as heroes. There are just flawed people doing their best, and the Nazis that the good flawed people need to punch. That's the world. Like, everything else...
Punch the space Nazis!
Everything else is artifice, and that's the whole thing. Like, that's also Poe's entire character arc, is that he's like this hotshot cool pilot who gets a bunch of people killed, and is constant meddling, sending his friends on an idiot suicide mission that actually only hurts everyone around them. That entire plot line, like, if this movie started with Finn coming out of his coma and someone ran into the hospital room and fucking blackjacked him back into unconsciousness, it would have saved so many lives, because everything he does after he wakes up gets everyone around him killed. All these cool heroes are poison. Fucking Laura Dern, holy shit. Okay, Johnny, the best scene in not only this movie...
I have heard that Laura Dern is like the force majeure.
Yeah. She doesn't have a lot of screen time, but her final act is one of the greatest sequences in film history.
So who does she play?
She plays the person who replaces Leia while she's in her coma after being spaced. She's like the new person who's like takes Leia's job. And her whole thing is she's like super slimy and dickish to everyone to make you think she's a traitor, because they're being tracked. And like the red herring is like, maybe there's a traitor. There isn't. It doesn't matter. Nothing comes of any of that.
Right.
But it turns out she just doesn't trust hotshot pilot Poe because he's a hot-headed idiot who gets people killed. Secretly, her and Leia had a plan the whole time, and it worked. Not only does it work, but it would have worked way better if everyone would have just stayed out of her butt. But at the end, she, faced with overwhelming odds and watching the last rebellion people getting mowed down, turns her fucking ship around, puts it into light speed, and drives it through all the bad guys. And the audio-visual experience of watching Laura Dern own 100,000 space Nazis, that erection will go forward through time for 100 generations.
Yeah,
it was so good.
I gotta tell you, you just describing that to me, I could feel certain blood valves in my body just open and give way, and I'm ready.
That sequence alone is worth the ticket price. And it's also, like, on paper, like, the idea of one ship driving into other ships, whatever. I've seen it in every science fiction movie. But what Rian Johnson does with it, like, the way the sound drops out, the way that everything is, like, cleanly bisected in a way that represents just the sheer speed she was going. It's fucking magic.
So you're happy with Ryan Johnson's direction then?
Of course, he nails it.
That is like, I mean, that is really like, that's the big jumping off point for this movie, is that apparently Disney was so happy with this that they've said, hey, do you want to do three new movies of your own?
And it makes sense because there's this kind of split between people who want the Force Awakens style Star Wars, which is like straightforward, kind of formulaic, heroic movies, and then people who want the fucking potential of the Star Wars universe just to get weird and like experimental. Man. And I want
that was one of the things that when Disney bought up the franchise that I really bummed me out was when they announced that the expanded Star Wars universe was done. I was like, oh man, that's all my weird Star Wars.
Yeah, but this movie's
like,
weird.
That was my Admiral Thrawn, which apparently they had like the fucking like wherewithal and the foresight to actually bring him back as a canon character in Rebels. Good choice, Disney. But like, you know, all those like weird little side stories as well. You know, Kyle Katarn being this like, you know, fed up kind of like mercenary Jedi-ish character, like, you know, like I was worried that Disney was going to not sanitize Star Wars, because Star Wars is like, it's relatively sanitized to begin with, but like, you know, clean the grit out of the corners of it and just like remove some of that delicious secondary character, that alternative Star Wars flavor. But if like, I mean, if this is it, if Ryan Johnson is pulling that shit and Disney's behind it, then I'm actually looking forward to. I just had an emotion. Oh, that's nice.
But I like the idea of both kinds of Star Wars movies existing, because there's audiences for both, and I want people to enjoy themselves. If you don't want the kind of movie that says, hey, Star Wars fans, you kind of suck, and a lot of the things that came before were bad, then
you want a movie for your 7-year-old.
Yeah, where the good guys save the day.
You want a movie for your 37-year-old.
Oh man. This movie gets weird in a lot of really cool ways. It does a lot of things with the Force that I think are they have precedent in like expanded universe stuff, but not in the main movies. Like there's a lot of like long distance Force communication. There is, I mean, we might as well just get there. The basically the climax of the film is a lightsaber duel between Kylo Ren and Luke Skywalker, where Kylo keeps running after him like full of rage and trying to hit him, and Luke keeps dodging. But then it's revealed it's actually not Luke. It's Luke projecting a hologram from another, you know, galaxy away. He's not there at all. And it's like, that power has never been shown before. And if like, I understand you being like, I don't know if that fits in with the existing suite of powers unlockable in the expanded universe. Fuck off. It's awesome. That shit ruled.
Man, that's not one of my upgrade cards in Battlefront 2.
Yeah. The only rule of magic when you're writing fiction is you can't contradict something once you've established it. Otherwise, it's magic. Do whatever you want. And I want that. I want the world of Star Wars to feel full of possibilities like that. If it's like, no, we only have telekinesis, lightning, and mind control, and that's it.
And also miss me super fast.
Well, yeah, you can do sweet flips or something. I don't know. The prequels were inconsistent about the sweetness of the flips. But there's a bunch of shit like that. Like, I've been waiting my entire life to see someone push the button on a lightsaber with the Force. I don't recall that ever happening in any of the movies. Maybe it happened in like one of the animated shows or something. But they finally just have someone use the lightsaber in like a new way besides swinging it. There's a part where he basically, Kylo Ren basically uses it to shoot someone through the eye at close range. It's just, that's the kind of shit that should have been in all the prequels instead of all the CGI flips. It's just like creative use of the things you've established in this universe.
Nice.
I'm just so jazzed. I'm so psyched about it. It was so good. Like the only
I'm really looking forward to seeing it now.
Only criticisms I have are I feel like some of the Finn stuff dragged a little bit, and I knew this when they established it. They're like, all right, we have to get on the evil guy's ship, but they have this blah, 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 techno-babble science thing we have to get through, so we got to go on a side quest to get the unlock to get through into the bad guy level. And it was like, I don't know if they have time for that. That feels like a real long side quest. Like, and then it was, and that was kind of a bummer because I feel like it was an obvious structural issue just from like a technical writing perspective that they kind of fumbled. But I also read that there were like rewrites to give that character like more time or something because he was unexpectedly popular from the first one. So I don't know the full extent of that, but that feels like something like, oh man, people really like this Finn guy. We got to give them more. So they go on a field trip to the capitalism planet. It's very explicit. This movie's politics rule. They just go and smash all the rich guys stuff, and it not only does it not help, it actually kind of bones the heroes in the end. But it was like this entire detour was just about like, you know, all these war profiteers. Let's just like fuck their shit up. This could be called Star Wars Episode 7. This thing is not sacred. Also, can I just say something about Rose? But one of the things that made me audibly go like, what? In that movie was in order to save Finn's life, because Finn is in a ship and he's kamikazing into the bad guys. He's fully accepted his own death. So to save him, she kamikazes her ship into him. Both of them going full speed. How in the world is that? Not only should it not have worked, but like he's not even like mad about it.
Look, Austin, obviously you've never played TIE Fighter.
True. If someone crashed their ship into me at full speed against my direct order not to contravene my wishes that I've made for my own life, I would be a little bit more animated than he was.
Yeah, but you're not the boss of me.
It's pointless to even argue about his level of anger because he should be dead. Because she smashed into him in a spaceship, so...
Also, I just have to point this out. The fact that you've never played TIE Fighter has absolutely no bearing on that situation. It's just something that you should probably rectify.
Yeah, I have an infinite amount of thoughts, but I'll try to keep it short. Do we have thoughts about them killing off Snoke in the second movie when we thought he was going to be the big bad?
Oh, yeah?
Like, evil is sexy, right? And I think there's like a little bit of Daisy Ridley's performance there where she was like a little conflicted about like, you're evil and I hate you, but also I'm going through some stuff emotionally and you do have a six-pack. And then there's the other layer, which is it was kind of played for comedy. So yeah, this came out of a discussion of Snoke, and I just did want to say that I like what they did here because Snoke is vastly less interesting than the character development they've given Kylo Ren, and they're making him the villain. I think in the third one we'll give it more weight, where in the original trilogy the Emperor is the really underdeveloped Snoke kind of guy, and he is kind of the final boss, and it's kind of a wet fart of an ending when Vader's the one we want to see.
You want familiar villains.
Yeah,
you do. When I think of, at least, in the past 5 years or something like that, one of my favorite villains to come out was Kingpin in the Daredevil Netflix TV series. There was a familiarity that the show bred. Like, it very purposely, it grew this knowledge of the bad guy, and it let the actor, whose name escapes me right now, Vincent D'Onofrio, like really flex his muscles, like really spread his wings, and give more to the role of a villain than we usually get. So speaking without having seen the new Star Wars film, like knowing the villain, like being close to the villain as the audience is a very important feature in a good versus evil tale.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything they could have done to make Snoke interesting enough to keep him alive, and also that well was poisoned by the fandom's insistence on trying to ascribe him some kind of other significance. And I say this as somebody who makes my sort of living putting fiction out into the universe. You can't control what people latch onto. You can spend a lot of time on something and try really hard and people ignore it, and then just so that you could throw it in once, 10 seconds and people love, and it's the whole new thing about your whole thing. And I feel like that kind of happened to Snoke. He was just a vehicle for Kylo Ren's development, but everyone built him up. It's the Half-Life thing. We talked about this 1,000 times. There's no Half-Life 3 they could release that could live up to anyone's imagination. So don't. Yeah. Just don't do it. There's no point in weathering the disappointment. You can't
or at least
control it.
At least don't hype it. Just drop it. Like, just pick a Monday and be like, oh yeah, by the way, we made this.
If you're going to, yeah. And there's an argument that it could have been possible to make Snoke more interesting. I just don't think it's worth the effort when you already have 100,000 characters to characterize, which is
Yeah.
Unfortunate for Phasma and Benicio del Toro's character, both of whom I think have a lot of potential, but don't really get a chance to shine.
I mean, you've already got 6 movies behind you, spanning like almost 40 years. So, just like, it doesn't always have to be in the family.
Yeah. So I can feel the desire to move on emanating. Like, one last thing, which is when it was revealed that BB-8 was driving the ATST, I clapped in the theater like a fucking rube. How fucking phenomenal were the visuals in Snoke's throne room, though? That whole scene with the Praetorian Guard and everything, that was like nearly Lynchian. I'm just thinking about that, like the salt planet, like every fucking setting in this movie is like the new most beautiful thing on film, and I can't handle it.
I just gotta ask a quick question before you continue. Is this a planet like chiefly made of salt, or is it a planet where everybody is just like really super salty?
There's a thin layer of salt, but I think there's the other part is that entire scene is like the whole planet is covered in a thin layer of salt, so white, it looks like snow, but under that it's red crystal. Like inside of all the cave, there's a part where they fly through a trench and it's all red crystals and stuff, but the effect is anytime someone steps somewhere, it brushes the salt away and you get just this fucking blood red image, and it as the scene gets like bloodier and people start dying, it goes from white to red, obvious symbolism. But then the payoff to that is not the salt joke, it's that during the sword fight between Kylo and Luke doesn't leave any footprints because he's not there. It's a holographic projection. That for me is what that was all about, although there was also some other there's a lot going on. The movie is layered and just fucking choice. I just can't emphasize enough how dope it was.
I'm certain I'm going to enjoy the movie. Don't get me wrong. I have reached a point in my life where good writing is a prize. It's not in most things. So I've learned to appreciate good storytelling. Pardon me.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing. I just remembered another thing. I think this retroactively makes The Force Awakens better. Because when that came out, I was like, wow, this is really just a retread of A New Hope. It doesn't really add anything. I get that it's kind of functional and that it reestablishes it for a modern audience and goes through the beloved beats to kind of give a new status quo. But contrasting that with this new movie, which is all about turning the status quo inside out and then shoving its head up its own ass and then just like telling it it's like a shitty little loser, I think it is intensified because we just got that status quo like served up to us and really high, like put under a microscope, so that when the head enters the anus, you like really feel it.
I am gonna be really, really interested to see a Rian Johnson script directed by J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, what the fuck is that gonna be like? Hopefully,
that's
mostly fine.
Gonna be Nutter Butters. But we don't know, right? I mean, like, it could very well be that J.J. Abrams sat down to watch The Last Jedi and was like, fuck, why couldn't I make a Star Wars movie like that? Well then, as a quick aside, I'd like to say that I started watching a TV show this past week called Happy! Apparently Happy is a show based on a Grant Morrison graphic novel where it stars Christopher Maloney as a kind of an ex-New York super cop who, was either fired or resigned in disgrace, and is now essentially hired muscle. Hitman, punches dudes, presses your cheese hard. If you get what I'm talking about, you probably don't. I don't know what that means. And it like in the very first episode, in the middle of basically eliminating a trio, a quartet that was supposed to be a trio of sort of low-level mob enforcer douchebags, he comes into possession of a password that's supposed to unlock a mystical file that would make a certain mob boss unstoppable. And in the middle of this hit, he starts having a heart attack, and when he wakes up in the ambulance on his way to the hospital, he sees a floating unicorn that looks really more like a cartoon donkey unicorn, voiced by Patton Oswalt, that I know Leon is not a huge fan of, but I really like Patton Oswalt, who claims to be Happy, the horse, who's an imaginary friend of a little girl named Haley who's been kidnapped. And he's like, Nick, you gotta help me, we gotta save her! And this, like, burnt-out, drug-addled, health wreck of a cop is the only one who can see Happy, the unicorn horse. This show is weird. Like, delicious weird. I've only seen the first 2 episodes. It's very fun, very violent, very macabre. But there's a charm to it. You know, like the Jerry Springer show is a guest star in the 2nd episode. Like the actual Jerry Springer show. There's like the set, the audience, Jerry Springer, everything. Yeah. I'm enjoying where it's going, but we've only taken a couple of steps so far. I think it's on Sci-Fi. We don't get Sci-Fi in Canada, so I'm watching it on Showcase. But it's something. And Christopher Maloney is fucking fantastic in it. And just so we're clear, no relation. Christopher Maloney spells it Italian, so like Meloni. And he's great. Yeah. So it's a burnt out cop capering around New York at Christmas time with an imaginary friend voiced by Patton Oswalt, who gets his snout into some cocaine in episode 2, which is funny.
You ready for questions? Here we go. So to change the subject, Bright Marsh asks, "What are your Porg opinions? Are they spicy?"
I think that even though I haven't seen the movie, everybody would benefit from my expertise. That it looks to me like saffron would be an important component. Of course, liberal use of salt and pepper.
This is a great joke. I love it.
I'm not sure that it would really benefit from too much spice. So you probably want to use something just a little bit, like maybe some fennel seed to get like a little bit of licorice pepper kind of taste, and probably white pepper.
So I like the Porgs. They're cute, and they weren't like annoying comic relief. I do think, I hope this is true. I read that the reason the Porgs were introduced is because they did filming on that island that all the Luke stuff takes place on, and there was like birds there that they couldn't keep out of the shots. So instead of going through all the trouble of digitally removing them, they just added to them and made them aliens. It does sound like a thing that is exaggerated, or maybe like it comes from a kernel of truth, but isn't 100% accurate. But as far as I'm concerned, it's what happened. So, all right. So here's a thinker, random web person, Kirstine, of course, from the forums.
Mom,
Dearest mother, asks, "Have you ever been wrongly convinced of a trivial fact your entire life, and when you were shook when you learned the truth? For example, I just learned that panthers aren't a species, but just black versions of other cats." Do you guys know that, like, panthers are just puma?
At one point in time, I thought that the Philosopher King was a good idea, and then I learned that was just fascism.
Deep. I know this because Florida panthers are, as we learn in school here in Florida, just pumas, just mountain lions basically. But there are a version of them. They're not special or anything. So yeah, panther is the kind of name for a bunch of things, including tigers and lions and all that. So not their own guy. Yeah, biology facts. The question was, is there anything you believed for a while and then it turned out it wasn't true? I'm trying to think of one. These are the tough questions where we have to just on air recall our entire life story.
Yeah.
Something related, and it's not exactly this, but there's
this year, a number of actors and directors that I thought were nice people have turned out to be shit fucks.
That's true. But I was gonna say something that happens to pretty much everybody who plays video games is at some point they have a realization that Phoenix Down is a kind of feather, and it refers to like a phoenix's feather, and it's not just a weird English from bad translations. I had a bunch of food notions crushed late last year when Stephanie got their diabetes diagnosis. Like, just this idea of, like, you know, you think you're eating healthy, and guess what? Like, it's just about learning how the body processes food, and how things like sugar and wheat, the body just kind of, like, breaks down into the same thing. I mean, a lot of just learning about American history is that, like, forever. Like, do you guys remember how you felt when you learned that the FBI murdered a bunch of civil rights activists?
At one point in time, I didn't believe that you could get beef tenderloin for under, like, $12 a kilogram. But then I was at the grocery store last week.
Johnny said that he's never learned anything from watching videos on the internet. Where did he learn all of his advanced cooking techniques?
All right, so first of all, saying that I've never learned anything from videos on the internet was a facetious comment. But the cooking techniques? All right, so here's the thing, is that you may not remember, there was an era of time when YouTube videos did not exist. And people often disseminated information to each other just through speaking, and also books. I'm an owner of few cookbooks, but the ones that I have are so good. And Stephanie worked at a number of fine dining restaurants when we had met. So their interactions with the kitchen were absolutely instrumental for me learning certain techniques myself. And then you just get, like, I don't know, like, once I had a kind of a taste of it, I just started reading more. Really reading. Like, going to websites and reading recipes and learning, like, just weird little techniques. Like, deglazing a pan with alcohol was something that Stephanie taught me. Where, you know, you have stuff stuck to the bottom of the pan, and it's like, that's good stuff. It's spicy, it's oily, people want that. And then essentially putting an alcohol in the pan, like brandy and or wine, and it acts as a solvent. And then that stuff comes off. And then it cooks in with the liquor flavor. And then you make a gravy with that. And that's fucking amazing. So, once you're interested in something, you'll pick it up. Also, reading.
I was trying to think of a joke about, like, how reading was lame and for losers or whatever, but I just couldn't muster that right now. Like, I'm in a place where I think everyone should just log off and go back to books. I just, like, earnestly. That's not a joke anymore. When you said kicking your mom in the face, it reminded me of a Star Wars thought I have. Not non-spoilers, so we don't need to go back into the warning. But when people were talking about Rey's parents all the time, it made me think about how fiction has this warped view of parental like values. Like it's very, very important to fictional characters. Like in the new Punisher series, the villain's like Freudian excuse for villainy is like his mom abandoned him and it just turned him into an evil villain guy. And it's like, who are these people? Like most people I know don't like their parents like at all. Like I've never even met half of mine. The one I met was bad. Like what is everyone's parent thing? I understand it as a fictional device, right? That like it's having characters care about their parents is drama filled, but like that doesn't seem to reflect reality at all.
I think most stories don't reflect reality.
Fuck.
At all.
Yeah, there's a space for that. I don't know. I just want some piece of fiction to be like, I know the secret about your parents. And the person would be like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to Arby's later. Like, I don't know. That would be refreshing. Here's an Austin question from Cyretha, who asks, Austin, why is the Black Lotus card such a big deal? So for Magic the Gathering, people already know the answer to this. If not, the Black Lotus is the most expensive trading card in all of existence, probably. The one went for $30,000. Most notably, I just Googled it. You can get one for $15,000 if you're in the market for one. The $30,000 one, I think, was like mint out of pack at the time. So obviously, supply and demand are real market forces. It is rare because it was only printed in limited amounts at the very beginning of Magic's history, and they stopped printing them, and they promised to never print them again because of the reserved list, something we've discussed before. So rarity, obviously. The other thing is the demand for it is because it is fundamentally an unfair part of the game. It's like
OP.
It's like if you played chess and all of your pieces were queens. It's not like Richard Garfield had a lot of good ideas. Black Lotus is not one of them. It's almost a metaphor for capitalism. It lets you start the game with more resources than your opponent. And after that lead is hard to come back from because once you have wealth or capital, as it were, it is easier to acquire additional wealth and capital through perhaps Mana Rocks, Dark Ritual, Pyroclasm, some of those spells, which also is how capitalism works. You get magic spells. And then it's just impossible to beat if your opponent starts the Black Lotus, Mountain, Channel, Fireball, most famously. So yeah, Black Lotus is very expensive because there aren't many of them, and they let you inherit wealth, and the estate tax does not exist in Magic the Gathering. God, I love the estate tax. Can we just talk about the estate tax? I really think it gets a bad rap. I think we should take all of the family's wealth when they die. At gunpoint if necessary. No one took my bait. I wanted to drag that into I wanted to make you defend America.
Make me defend Austin.
Yeah. I know you love America, Johnny. Dr. Izix asks, if it was an option, would you spend some time or live in space? What planet or moon? My thing is, though, if living on another planet through technology is functionally identical to living on Earth now, then what's the point of doing it? We all like, in theory, the idea of like space stuff, but the actual mechanics of doing anything spacey are kind of a pain in the ass. And that...
No, I want to go.
I think we just want space-flavored life. I don't know if we want that shit.
I want to go. Take me to space.
It strikes me that this episode's going to come out very near Christmas, so we should do one Christmas question on the way out the door. All right. I see one here from Decibel, who asks, do you guys have any cool Christmas traditions? Yeah, the only thing I can think of that we actually ever did, like that could be considered a tradition, is watch It's a Wonderful Life. That was like my family's Christmas movie.
I like mulled wine. It's basically a spiced wine where first of all you dump a shit ton of sugar into a pot. And then you add shit like you put in cinnamon sticks, star anise, orange rind, like lemon rind or lime rind, juices. Like you basically fucking like fruit and spice wine up to hell, and then cook it.
Johnny, do you ever feel tempted to just make alcohol stuff up? Just be like, oh man, you guys should really try this spicy Midwestern electric twist. It's great. You put eggs inside of a chicken. And
I have. I've experimented.
No, but to make it up to fool me and Leon.
Oh.
Because we can't call you out.
No.
You can just say anything.
No, because it's still broadcast, right?
Oh, you think our listening audience would narc on you?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, the internet would be like, well, actually. So, like that's the internet. I did a great thing today. I ate only one piece of pizza.
That's a superhuman restraint.
I was kind of surprised.
This is what Man of Steel should have been about.